Hey guys, this is Ashley and Russ, and this is She Wolf Alchemy. Today we are talking about daddy issues, but also mommy issues. So, just heading into it, how did we even get on this topic?
I brought it up because I was watching something that made me realize I was like, I think I got some daddy issues that I don't think I was aware of.
This is true. And that's not at all what I was about to say. This is very true. That is how we got on the topic. I feel like I laugh at it and throw that in a lot just in life for me for some reason. I use that all the time. Like, I think it's so funny. Like, I'm always just like, girl, that's just me and my daddy issues, my bad. And just going along with it. But I know there's some people who take that like super offensively. Like, they hear the term daddy issues and it is like a big insult.
But a lot of times it's used like an insult, and which I personally hate, because it's this insult that a lot of times gets thrown at women, and it's like, I'm not the what I used to always say is like, I'm not the person with the issues. Like, the person who abandoned their child got the issues. Like, because
Yeah.
that's how people, phrase it, like, "Oh, you got all these problems because your daddy didn't love you."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we won't go in on the patriarchy, but that's just things being geared towards men and women in general. Matter of, you know, all these single mothers is the reason why they in jail. Like, it's the father's fault for leaving, I think. Why are we mad at the woman? She stayed with
Yeah.
the child. She decided to raise the child.
Yeah, where it feels like people blame the custodial parent, the person who is there.
Yeah, yeah. But as I said, I don't take it as it's not something I use myself all the time. That's also just my own sense of humor. I'm always directing it towards myself. But do you take it as an insult?
I would say, yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't say like not necessarily a harsh insult, but I guess because of the way that it has been used, or the way I've always heard it used, has been meant to be an insult, not necessarily to like just describe a circumstance. People are like, because especially with women, I feel, it's like, oh, you're a whore because you got daddy issues. Like that, I don't understand. I mean, I can understand the very loose connection, but I hate that, again, because it's like using something like that to define, like, it's an oversimplification.
Yeah. And I guess I don't take it as such an insult because I am never thinking of the same things. Mine is never like connected to like, oh, you are promiscuous, daddy issues. It's never like you are attracted to older men, daddy issues.
Exactly. That's how
I
people
don't
use
know.
it.
I know. But for me, I use it from very much like a theoretical framework of like abandonment issues. That's what my daddy issues look like. Like, we'll leave you before you leave me. That's what my dad like for me. So I think because I take it in that way, more on the avoidance side, I think it's funny. Because for me, I don't know why. I think it's funny because when people are like, oh, you just like, your father. I'm like, I'm afraid of commitment and never being truthful. I'm not like that. Only a little bit.
Yeah. It's also, and I guess for me, the reason it's also always bothered me is because since my dad was absent, so it's like thinking of it was hard to accept the fact that somebody who I didn't feel like had a presence in my life actually had any impact.
Yeah.
I'd like to think of, he's absent from my life. What he doing or didn't do has nothing to do with me, and that's it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then there's
No.
other moments where I'm like, just like my daddy didn't used to do this. And it comes back up. Like I was telling you when I was watching, what brought it up for me recently is like I was watching a TV show, and there's a strong father character on there. And one, I think because of the phase of life I'm in, he was becoming very attractive to me. I was like, "Ooh, look at him protecting his babies. That is it's doing something."
This is the conversation I remember exactly now.
It was doing something to me. But then also, when they were describing feeling safe and protected and all these other things, I was like, oh, Not that I haven't felt those, but not from my father. Like, I
Yeah.
remember back when that movie Taken came out,
Yeah.
and, even though her parents weren't together, she called her dad, and her dad came through and saved her. And I remember seeing that movie and being like, I would just have been shit out of luck. If it was up to my dad, I'd have been sold off to sex trafficking. That would have been the end of it. Thankfully, I
Yes.
have my mother.
Yes. And those are two very, very different. Yeah. So, but see, the difference is I had my fathers in my life, and that's what fucked me up. Like for me, it was definitely like if y'all could have just left Anna to just raise me on her own, and I would have been so much better. So for me, it's more so like I'll see something or I'll do something that's just very, very dismissive or avoidant, and I'll be like, that's you acting like one of them. That's you acting like that man. That's where that's where mine comes from. So the two sides of daddy issues: the fathers that left and the fathers that stayed.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, the same with moms, the one that left and the one that's all. The thing is, our parents have an impact, I guess, whether we like to ever admit it or not, which I know we say that often on here, but it comes full circle so many times.
It really does, because we really got to talk about men and the mommy issues. So when I had brought up mommy issues at first, you were like, I did not think about this, Raz. And for me, I was like, this is my whole dating experience, just men with mommy issues being attracted to me.
Because you give off the vibe, nurturing mommy vibe.
And wait till I find out I'm avoided in relationships. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I told you I have my theory about why I attract so many mommies, so many mommies, boys, men. But yeah, that has been a major thing for me in my life. And kind of one of the things you said to me earlier was like, but I feel like we really don't talk about that. I feel like we really don't address it, unless it's an extreme situation like baby boy, Tyrese type thing where you're like, oh, mommy's boy type thing, you don't really hear it talk about. But from my lived experience, it's a very real thing that I feel like we should actually talk about more. Again, not in a teasing way, but in a way of like, that's the mommy issue shit. Maybe you should try therapy. Like, let's steer them there.
Like it's an issue that exists and should be discussed.
Yeah.
It doesn't get weaponized against men, I don't think, in the same way that daddy issues can be weaponized against women or have been weaponized against women.
Possibly not. I mean, you definitely get no, you're right. Not weaponized though. I feel like it's more of a punchline with men. It's more of a ha type of thing.
And it has to be extreme, like you said, extreme versus like, I guess because I'm thinking of, I can't think of how many shows, how many movies or whatever, where there's a male character who's like, yeah, I'm out to find a girl with daddy issues. Like,
that's which is just like a code word for broken. I'm about to go for broken and loose. Yeah. No, I know I have told you this story, but I dated someone for a long time. Actually, my longest relationship ever was with somebody who I didn't recognize it as mother issues because they really didn't talk about their mother at that point in time. They did a lot later, but we dated for a long time. It was my longest relationship. And then I met his mother and realized I looked like his mother. Like we had similar body types. We have similar, like how we wear our hair. Like we look alike. If you saw me next to her, you would think I was her daughter. And it was just a whole moment for me where I then had to start reassessing different things about him where I'm like, I think this is some Oedipus shit. Like I really have moments where I was like, oh, this is some Freud, you psychologically trying to work something else out here. Like that's how it made me walk away feeling from that. And then not only that, I tend to attract a lot of men. Again, just with the stereotypical mother issues of like, I feel like not stereotypical, because I feel like when you say stereotypical, you think men who need women to do for them. And they are like, but my mom, always wash my clothes. Why can't you wash my clothes? Type of thing. And that's not at all what I'm dealing with. What I'm typically dealing with is men who have like deep resentment that they refuse to work through with their mother, that I happen to be the catch for all for, like when it comes up. And I'm just like, hey.
And then they're like enacting or have that
Yeah.
resent other women. Yeah.
Yeah. Towards other women. And you're just like, this is really, and I think because of the way my mind works, I think because the field I'm in and so forth, because I probe for certain questions when I'm trying to like help and nurture, I end up getting other stuff out that makes me quickly connected now. Like, oh, this is and I think if you don't know to do that, or not don't know, but if you don't naturally do that, it's easier to gloss over because we don't point out like this is mommy issue type things so loudly to the public.
Not because as you were saying that, I was sitting here thinking like, I don't know that I would be able to make that connection because I don't know that I've ever like done a deep dive and question or anything about like a man's relationship with his mom. Not,
Ooh,
more so or less if they're close or not or whatever, if I pick up on something along the way like that, but not like, do you resent your mother? Like,
yeah,
I don't think
no,
I've
no.
ever gathered enough info like that
Oh
to be able to
no.
say, oh, you got mommy issues.
No, little patterns though, kind of like what they say with daddy issues, little patterns of like, okay, I saw your mom as weak. So you like girls, you have to save. And even though you keep saying your love language is acts of service and whatever, it's not. And then you wonder why relationships don't work is because you feel the need to save people, though. You need to feel the need to do for people. And you actually resent doing it, which is why you keep getting these relationships and then resent the person. And you keep saying, this is my love. It's not your love language. That is how you had to survive in childhood. And that's the relationship of how love was shown between you and your mother because you was parenting her half the time. So now you go out and find women that you have to save and rescue all the time. And but here's the thing, the minute you start saving and rescuing, you start to resent them. And then when you start to resent them, you grow angry. And this really is all about your mama. The whole attraction to this particular type is probably about your mama. Yet we keep playing this whole thing out. And the same could be opposite. I actually dated somebody who it really felt like he had mom issues. His mom had a very strong personality, was a very strong woman. And I remember one time, I can't remember what it was. I think it was like Christmas time. And he was trying to explain like his mama did something that made him out right before he had to go home for Christmas. And I was like, well, why can't you? He was like, nah, that's just, you don't understand. Mama is going to do what mama wants. She don't care nothing about nobody's feelings. Mama, like he would say little statements like that all the time. And at first it seemed kind of like in loving ways, but then over time I'm like, this is a repeated thing you say about her though. Like, I don't know if you notice, you tell me this 3 times a week. That's kind of odd. That just, no, my mom don't care about nobody's feelings. My mom does what she wants. She don't care how it affects people. And here's the thing, so this is gonna make me sound horrible. But we one time like got into it and he had said a variation of that to me. Where he was like, you just be doing out here doing whatever you want. Rest, because it's the rest show. It's about Rest's feelings and what Rest want. And Rest is like, you ain't my man. Anyway. But when it clicked, it really clicked for me when he said it back to me. And then I thought about conversations we had about past relationships. And I was like, yeah, but I think you really like strong women. To break them. We ain't gonna go into that. Because you have a very particular pattern that stands out with strong personality women. And this thing is like cycling back, and now I'm realizing like, do you have trust issues, or did you not just ever feel safe in childhood? Like, do you need to go back? Maybe y'all two work that out, and then you come out into the dating world again,
or something. Yeah, most
yeah.
definitely. There's definitely, when you say that, I definitely, I should return you to home. Like, I just want to send you back home. There's some things that were not complete before you came out here, presenting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching your face as I talked, and I was just like, oh, she is having some flashbacks right now.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, no, I definitely have had those moments where I felt like, yeah, you just need to go ahead. I don't know that I've let anybody know that though. I mean, I might say that to somebody else, like, girl, he need to go on back home and finish being raised. And especially emotional immaturity, significant half-baked nature in life, those types of people who just allow life to happen to them and don't really. But anywho, that's another set of things.
Other thing. That is a whole other thing. Yeah, I would I feel like I'm destined to be with a man that has mother issues. That's the only type that's attracted to me, apparently. That's fine if he has already resolved them. Like, if you're aware, you're actually working on, you're not making that my personal issue, that's fine. But also, I feel like, even though there's a running joke about that, it's not like men use that to be like, you're not dateable. You're not, because if anything, you get that, like, no, that's what I want, damage. That's what I want, this, that.
That's true. That is an interesting flip. You're right. Because right. Women are not seeking out men with money. We're like, please, no, thank you. Versus the fact
they are falling into our laps on accident, but we were not trying to catch them. But they are actually out here trying to like net them, like you said on TV shows. Like, I'm about to go out and find me a girl with daddy issues.
I'm just saying, like, that description just drives me crazy. But I think, and also I was listening to, I feel like I'm using a lot of like pop culture references. That's because it's so prevalent. You know, listening to Kendrick Lamar's album, the one song where he says he was a grown man with daddy issues. Like, a lot of us have them, and it presents in different ways that we're not, always aware of.
Yeah, but you know what? Now that you say that, I feel like when men say it, it takes on a whole different tone. Because as you were saying that, I remember like listening to the album and being like, yo, that's deep that you even like said that out loud, because you don't typically hear that. But there's a show I watch on HBO called Animals, and it's an adult animated show. And like one of the running jokes in the show is that I think Philip, the character Philip, has daddy issues. Like, it's something he brings up all the time. Like, whenever he gets in trouble, he's like, my dad abandoned me, I have daddy issues. And everybody's like, oh, okay, coddle him. But I'm like, dang, that takes on such a different context though. Because again, the whole thing is, okay, hug him. He needs support. It takes on a different life form.
I mean, we're not often coddled. I don't really care and you're right, we're not gonna be that podcast. But
strong opinions about that. Because
we don't get coddled. Men don't get coddled.
No,
I don't care what nobody says, and that's what irks me about it. Because every time I see something, and I have never discounted men having their feelings, but it irks me when I see stuff that's like, oh, men are only cared about when they make money, and no one cares about us. People only care about women and children, and it's just like, what? Like, we don't get coddled at all. Who does all this coddling that y'all actually? Anyway,
that was gonna go into a race rant for me. So like, let's.
That's a whole other
So daddy issues, but okay, yeah. So, but I think it is interesting to look at, like, it can form in multiple ways. You do have that, like, some of us have daddy issues. Like, he was an heir. Like, he was in there, and what kind of hole that created. Some of us have him like, yeah, that man was here. Yeah, he was here. We really wish maybe he wasn't. He was somebody who did not need to be here. He was not a good influence. Because I do think, like, we typically think of it in one way, of like, oh, abandonment type of thing. But it does happen from different ways. It does happen from more than just like, okay, maybe dad wasn't there. It does happen in different forms, and I think the way that it happened does trigger something different.
Yeah, I know for me, and maybe for other people, when I start picking, it's when I feel like I'm repeating, when the same statement seems to fit in more than one situation. Kind of like you were saying with the guy, like when you heard it back, you're like, wait a minute. Because one of the things that I've always said about my father was like, oh, he's never gone out of his way for me. Like, it had to be made very convenient for him in order for him to see me. Like, literally, I had to be dropped at his doorstep for him to see me. When my mom is someone who would go to the ends of the earth, But I have literally made those same like statements with like men I've dated or things like that, where I just be frustrated. And when I start feeling, which of course no one likes to feel like they have to be convenient for someone, but it just be upsetting me, like, deep. And then when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is the same type of thing that I've said about my dad. Now I'm saying it to this man, and like, what the heck?
Yeah. Like, what is going on here?
what does that mean? I don't what does that mean about me and what I'm trying to get? But I also don't think that there's anything wrong with because what I'm really saying is I want somebody to show up for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
have to be a certain way in order to receive your love. I don't want
Yeah.
to, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at
No.
all. Yeah.
I know for me how it shows up when I'm like, for me, because mine is more of a what they do versus what I do or say. For me, it is a matter of like, my dads are both very emotionally distant people. And for me, it shows up where I'm having a moment where I start resenting them. And I'm like, where is this resentment? This feeling is familiar. And I'm like, oh, this is how I felt towards dad. Like, this is how, like, I have this realization of you are giving me the same feeling that I hate getting when it comes to my father. And what it usually is, like, I'm like, oh, what is it about me that keeps attracting or is attracted to emotionally unavailable people? And having that realization and having to have that talk with myself of like, oh, because this is what you think is normal from a male figure in your life. This is a normal boundary for you to not really be emotionally close, or not, maybe not emotionally close. This is a normal boundary for you to not feel emotionally safe and vulnerable. And having to have that readjustment in myself of being like, yo, okay, now what changes do I need to make?
Because another part of that is also me having to recognize in myself that some of that is also that I feel safe not being emotionally vulnerable with people or with males in my life. And so it's not just on them, a part of it's also on me because I feel safer keeping myself at a distance. I feel safer not being vulnerable and not being really too bonded. I feel safe at a distance, recognizing in myself that for me, for a long time, a pattern in relationships was a matter of I only liked relationships where I can leave at any moment and it did not affect me. Like the minute I started realizing, like, yo, leaving you might be hard. I like having the attachment to you. I like feeling bonded towards you. I feel like I might be able to be vulnerable with you. Terrified me. And those were the ones I was like, oh no, we gotta back up, we gotta self-sabotage, we gotta do something like that. I had to again recognize in myself, like, no, I liked patterns with people who didn't feel emotionally safe because I also liked not having to be emotionally safe for other people as well. And it was a big thing for me to recognize that and be like, okay, girl, now you got to break this down. This is something that you need to take up. This is something that you need to fix because it's not only the people you're attracting, it kind of goes back to that like attract like, where it's like, yeah, I was attracted to emotionally unavailable people because I was emotionally unavailable. I was attracted to people who I wasn't able to be emotionally vulnerable with because I also wasn't someone that was safe for others to be emotionally vulnerable with as well. And that was a whole thing for me to be honest with myself because when you first recognize it, it's like, oh, now let's look at them. What I'm attracted to, the problem, blah, blah, blah. And then having to stop after that and have a moment of accountability of like, okay, now let's look at you. You are also not a safe emotional place in relationships. You are also not a safe emotional place for vulnerability for partners, too. Let's look at you. Why did that develop for you? Why do you think that's normal in you? Why do you think you have to be so safeguarded and not show feelings as well? Not real feelings, not deep feelings, not feelings that are stable. Your feelings always vanish and disappear. Now let's look at that. And that was hard. That was really, really hard for me to go through that whole process. Part of the reason why we named the podcast She Wolf Alchemy, we won't get into the She Wolf part, but alchemy, the process of taking normal matters and making it into something spectacular and having to do that with your emotions. Anywho, sorry. That was a rant.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's why I was saying, once you notice like those certain themes, because I think that's how we can, because when you were saying that, I was like, dang, like, it's like, how can we fix certain things? When you notice like, oh, this is something, like, yeah, what's going on with me that this is what I'm looking for, or that
Yeah.
I keep repeating this circumstance. But it can be hard at times when you feel like, I think it's hard to identify that when you feel like, but that's what I need or I want.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
There's nothing wrong with me being emotionless.
it goes back to something I feel like I've said several episodes, that sometimes you have to ask yourself, if this a matter of they give me butterflies or if they give me anxiety. Sometimes we have feelings that are just familiar and we assume this means good. And we get excited, like, oh, I feel so familiar. But is your familiar something that's healthy?
And to add to that though, I think too, we also get accustomed to settling with a certain type of feeling that is also familiar, right? Like you can get used to feeling like love and pain together, or having these extreme highs and these extreme lows, and not realizing that like that's not like, you don't have to do that. And so we kind of get used to coupling these feelings together in a way that's like, yeah, all boyfriends talk to girlfriends like that. Like, no, they don't. You don't have to feel like shit every day.
I can't tell you how much it blew my mind to realize that most people don't feel anxious in relationships. Like when most people find someone they like or they love and they're like, oh my gosh, for most people, it wasn't anxiousness. It wasn't anxiousness that lasted from the time you met to the time you ended. And it blew my mind to find that out, because that's what I thought it was. Like, I thought that's how I know I like you. You make me so anxious. And that's how I know I like you, that having to, and that's why I say that saying all the time, because that was a realization of me of like, oh, is this butterflies or is this anxiety? But yeah, like that was a big moment for me, recognizing that, yeah, I associate love though also with being uncomfortable, that love isn't a comfortable thing. And having that realization like completely changed the way that I interact with people now. Not just in my love life, just in general.
Yeah. I know another time when I jokingly bring it up is whenever other people's dads send me dad type stuff, like, if you're going to be driving at night, you should get a gun, or you gotta buy. I'll be like, oh, is this what happened to dad? It's like, that's nice. That's sweet. But again, it tells me something. Oh, yeah, it is kind of nice to just have somebody be looking out for me, checking up on me.
I'm cracking up because I'm like, dang, I wish Nikki was here for this episode, but she would be quiet because her dad's just amazing. All throughout our friendship, me and Nick have been friends for about a decade now, or yeah, I think a little over a decade. And our whole friendship, whenever it comes to us talking about families, is her being like this, like really sweet Cosby's pre-scandal Cosby's type like moment, and me being like, what? People don't do that. Or just being like, what are you talking about? Like, me just being like super confused. Like, just me being like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I always joke with her about is like when we were still in college and we were friends, her family. This is actually how I ended up in Atlanta, y'all. Meek was supposed to move down here with me and chicken out. And I was like, oh, but I'm moving there. And her lying to me every year up until now, saying that it's okay, I'm going to move there next year. But we used to go to Atlanta a lot, and she had family down here, and her family does family reunions. And her family reunions, like, so one time she invited me, like, yo, come with me. It's a family reunion. It's going to be a great weekend. Me and you can still do our stuff, afterwards. Because, we were young. We was like going to the clubs and stuff. She's like, and then in the daytime, they feed us. It's great. They're going to feed us and we can go do whatever we need to do. So I was like, okay, cool. And when I tell you, my mouth dropped. And like, I literally, and she will tell you this, I literally had to go away. And then like the second day of festivities did not go because I felt so uncomfortable, because like everybody had on matching shirts. Like they said, hey, we're going to get matching shirts, pay for them, wear them, and everybody followed directions. And I was like, what? Like no arguing. Like everybody was just, bless you, baby. Oh, look at God's sunshine. Oh, kisses. Like everybody was just so sweet and like kissy hugging and all this stuff. And it was so wholesome. It was so wholesome that I was like, I know why you got anxiety, because this is perfection. Like, this whole thing it just ran so smoothly. Yeah, like nobody even was drinking. Like, I was very confused what was going on here. It was definitely like I stepped into the twilight zone. But I was gonna say, I wish Nick was here for this conversation. And I was like, but she would have nothing to say. She'd just be here like, oh, just
great.
just
I mean, look, I'm here for it. I I have just channeled my energy into, yes, if I'm going to have a child, like, I want them to have that kind of father. Like, I want them to know what it feels like to have, their father make sure their gas tank is full and walks them to all the little things. I see, some women who do have those types of relationships with their dads, and they, jokingly like post things on social media like, oh, my dad came and mowed my lawn for me, or my dad came and did it. And I'm like, it's so gosh doggone cute. Okay. But yeah, when I think about that, I'm like, no, I want my kids to have that kind of father. I want them to know what that feels like to have, of course I can be there, but again, you need both, apparently, because I believe my mom made me feel, safe and loved and cared for and all of those things. It doesn't change the fact that that was another person's obligation and they chose not to do that as well. So I want all them little things.
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah, for me, it's very important to date emotionally intelligent partners going forward. For me to be an emotionally intelligent partner that uses the intelligence that I have to apply to the relationship, I want that for me as well. We are hoping that's how things work out. But that for me is very important because I had a dad, my stepdad, definitely, who took me to the father-daughter dances, that makes sure, like, when I came home for Christmas breaks, went to rise my car and everything, check my tire pressures, all that type of good stuff. I had that, and now with my stepdad, he was great, and I really appreciate him for that. But even with that part, for me, and I think, this is going to be based on your personality, what you need, but for me, it was really important for me that my daughter grows up with emotional support, grows up in environments where she's allowed to cry, grows up in environments where she's allowed to do things that 4-year-olds do and not be punished for it. And not to say that I'm perfect. Lord knows she tested me today in Marshalls. So definitely, but have a male figure, have a father figure in her life that, like, talk through things, who is, emotionally available, that she grows up knowing that, like, your partner is supposed to be emotionally available to you, that's supposed to be emotionally safe space, that you should not feel anxiety is not love, control is not love, all those type of things. And with my daughter, I did luck out, like, her father is actually very emotionally available. He's an extremely emotionally available guy. He is very much a talk about your feelings, I love you so much. He's very touchy-feely. He actually probably was like the only person I dated up until recently who is a emotionally available person, who's very much, like, in touch with his feelings and stuff. And I love it. And I love their relationship. I love the way that they interact together. I love how safe she feels with him. I don't love everything about it, because she definitely has her moments where she's like, I'm gonna call my daddy. I'm like, what is your daddy gonna do to me? Like, I'm glad that you feel like that's your backup. He has no control over anything in my house. But I love that. I love that they have that, and actually seeing their relationship and seeing them grow together, it made it. I think it was something I knew, just not. I didn't know how to verbalize. Like, that's what I wanted, and now I'm like, yep, that's a thing. Like, if I am mating with somebody, if I'm procreating with somebody, this needs to be somebody that is emotionally intelligent. Because wow, look at this dynamic child who is so free and have all these expressions and is not afraid to say it. And those are the type of children I want to raise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Children who feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Feel safe to be themselves. Absolutely. I was thinking about one girl who was, a kid that I was working with who was telling me, we were talking about her dad, and she made the statement that she was okay that he wasn't there because she was like, a lot of people don't have their dad. I was like, that is just so sad and should not be. And, she's right. As a kid, like, you just make things normal and it's okay, but it's like, yeah, it shouldn't be that way. We can't keep doing this. And men are important parts of families. Healthy parents are good for children. They need a village. But
Yeah.
yes, having you know two people is good. I'm not saying that single parents can't do anything, but having that support, having that. And also, yes, male figures are, because half the population is men, and knowing good, healthy, safe men. Yes, going good, healthy, safe men is, I think, an important part of everybody's development. Because again, half the population are men, and unfortunately, there are people who can't point to good examples or good, safe examples, sometimes just based off of their upbringing and the world that, the world within their family.
Yeah. And going back to like when you brought up Kendrick Lamar and his album and him talking about like having daddy issues as a man, I think also examining like how not only does that affect little girls, but how important it is that young boys know that there are safe men out there as well. Because they also need to know that that they don't need to have that pressure of, oh, I have to be the safe person. I have to know you're a little boy. You're a little boy. You should not have to feel that responsibility. You should be able to also feel like there is safety in them. They deserve to know there are safe male figures as well. Because I hate when either side gets left out. Like, oh, men need to know that there are trustworthy, loyal women out there and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, women need to know that too. It's important for a woman to know, to be able to have female relationships. Like, it's important to be able to have those type of connections. There's certain things that your boo just not gonna understand. It's important for everybody to know that there is safety in either sex.
Yeah.
And also to be able to know what is dangerous in either.
No, but you're right. That I think you said an important thing about boys seeing healthy, safe men as well, and having that, being able to feel vulnerable and safe as well, to know that that's a safe space. Because I've also seen a lot of young men, or men in general, who, they want to be emotionally vulnerable or something. They themselves don't feel comfortable being emotionally vulnerable around other men. They would rather, with a woman. But if they haven't met a woman who is an emotionally safe space, because there is this assumption that, yes, we are nurtured differently as it relates to emotions. So the perception is that women have more emotional maturity, but that's not always the reality. So, you're waiting on this woman to come and be your safe space. She's not your piece, or whatever, what because of whatever is going on. And it's like, where do you go? So anyway, I think, yes, for young boys and men, because I'm thinking about like teen boys that I've counseled, where I've asked them, like, have you talked to your father about this? And their fathers are present figures in their life, and I'm like, have you talked to him about this? And just kind of see what and it's like, I can't tell, I tell my auntie, I tell my, like, they got everybody else, and I'm like, well, there are just certain things that he as a man is gonna know or can address. You have to come. He's your father, but
he's your son.
Yeah. But that's what I was saying. But also, like, what is happening that he's not feeling that? Like, it has to be shown to them that, like, yes, your father can be a safe space, should be a safe space.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. You should feel safe with the people who are in your home.
If not for the development of the family, but even for that man's own development, like as a person. I'm thinking about recently talking with someone about fatherhood, interviewing for an additional project I'm working on. But we were talking about fatherhood. We were talking about the role that is often put on fathers to be the provider, right? And so it's like, for a lot of people, it's like work as much as you can so you can make your money, so you can, because that's how you take care of your family. And he was talking about how for him it was important for him to be emotionally available and present in his home. So he took the sacrifice of working less, not being able to make as much money, but being physically more present in the home.
Yeah.
Be more emotionally available and support his wife, for those early years. And he was talking about, because those are his values, right? Like his values as an individual. I realized for me to feel like a better person, I can't just be work, and da. I need to be, because it's important to me that my child have me there in this way. And so I think, pushing the role of father into just that solely provider role I don't see how it's even fulfilling to that individual's like well-being overall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To be like kind of checked out from your family and just work and paid with, like, that's not good for the family.
I think the biggest takeaway, even if you are struggling with daddy issues, or you're struggling with your mommy issues, it's not something you have to stay with.
It's okay. A lot of us have mommy and daddy issues. It is not your fault. But you are an adult now, and it's time for you to start addressing those issues, figuring out what they are, working through them so that you can continue to grow and develop as a human and share your life with other awesome humans who are doing the same thing. So
hopefully a whole healing of the, collective all together. So out
for
here loving appropriately.
trying to raise the overall consciousness and love and whatnot of everything.
Look, I was looking for the words. I was like, what do they be saying? The masculine and feminine energies can come together in unity. Yes. So hopefully you guys like today's episode. We'll have a new episode for you guys next Sunday. It will be the first Sunday of the year 2023. Super excited for the things we have planned for this year, guys. Other than that, follow us on Instagram at SheWolfAlchemy, or if you need to reach out to us, you can contact us at SheWolfAlchemyPodcast@gmail.com. Other than that, guys, we hope you guys have a great start of the week, and you'll hear the sound of our voices again next Sunday. Bye.
Bye.